Hey everyone, I'm Davey. Welcome to HACKFLIX. We're in Dublin today at the GS Day conference, the first JavaScript conference in Dublin organized by Remo. We're going to shoot for HACKFLIX a section called Teach Me Anything in less than 10 minutes. We have amazing speakers, amazing guests, and they're going to teach us some amazing stuff. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Glen Keane. I'm a senior full stack engineer in Nearform, and today I'm going to be talking about the event loop in JavaScript and web workers.
Glenn, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Davey.
We're going to you're a software engineer,
Yep.
and today during this segment of Teach Me Anything in less than 10 minutes, what do we have? What do you have for us?
So today I'm going to be hitting on the event loop in JavaScript and web workers. To dive right in, JavaScript is an asynchronous programming environment, but it's inherently single-threaded. So how can you have asynchronous work with a single thread? Well, to do that, JavaScript has a concept called the event loop. And the way the event loop works is it's a queue of work. So this queue of work, it will schedule a piece of code and it will run through it. And as it's running through it, maybe it'll get to something which has to schedule something, which is asynchronous. And that asynchronous work will then be delegated to the browser or to the operating system. So if it needs to make a network request or if it needs to open a file, that needs to be delegated to the operating system or whatever system it's in. But then when that piece of work is completed, like we have a reply or we have a file open to read, that then gets scheduled on the back of the event loop.
Okay.
And we will eventually get to that piece of work or the reply and be able to process it. So that's all fine and dandy, but it's a little bit complicated. So when you think about working through each line of code one at a time, if you're working through something that's really hard to compute, that's CPU bound, it can take a really long time to compute and it can block the main thread of execution. And so if you're talking about a piece of code which takes 250 milliseconds to execute, like calculating the 10,000 prime number, as is the common example.
Exactly.
That's not a very hard task for a CPU. It's just, it takes time. And so if you're blocking your main thread for 250 milliseconds, you're causing pauses and what people call jank within your execution. Yeah. And that's not good. That ruins the user experience.
And the browser
completely freezes, becomes unresponsive.
Yeah.
So the way you actually deal with that is to use threads. Now, in the past, in other programming environments, threads are built in to the environment. Yeah. But in JavaScript in the past, that wasn't true. But now, with the advent of web workers or worker threads in node.js, you can now spin up a kind of parallel event loop and send it some work, and it will do a big data crunch or CPU bound task and just send you back to a reply. So if you're talking about calculating the 10,000 prime 20 times in a row, that's going to take you 5 seconds of calculations if you're just working on a single thread. But if you create 20 threads that do this in parallel, well, you can send it out and expect a reply within the 250 milliseconds that it takes.
And why do you think people today aren't using it? Well, what will be the reason why this is not heavily used?
Yeah, so in the past, we didn't have access to threads. So we built workarounds. A common workaround would be to delegate the task to a server. So you basically have your parameters for the piece of work and you make a network request and you'll get a reply. But that means that you're doing a really intense task on your server where you could actually be executing it on the client and delegating the work to someone that they want the work done. They can do it themselves in a way.
Okay. And what is the support status at the moment?
Yeah, so I primarily work with Node a lot of the time. So I know for a fact that worker threads have just landed with full support in Node 12.
Okay.
So that means there's no experimental flag. You can just start working with them today.
Perfect.
In the browsers, it's my understanding that it's commonly supported across all browsers.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Glenn. That was really useful. I think for people listening or watching, you should be using...
You should be using worker threads when you're...
Thanks.
Cheers.